Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the LitRPG podcast. I am Ramon Mejia. I'm here to bring you the latest LitRPG news, reviews, and of course author interviews. This week it's episode number 167 of the show, and I have 4 new LitRPG reviews for you folks this week. It was kind of a not a busy release week in LitRPG, very few new releases, and so I actually had a chance to go back and go over some things in my back catalog, and that includes Djinn Tamer's Rivals, the second book in the Djinn Tamer's Bronze League series, book number 2. Also reviewing this week Towers of Heaven, book number 1. Then also Attack Protocol, a Liberty Space Marine Adventure, Omicron Sector, book number 3. And last, Respawn 18 Up, which is the 3rd book in that particular series, but that came out a while ago. Still, had a chance to read some stories I've been meaning to, just haven't had open slots in the schedule. So this week was a good week to catch up. Before we go into that, we're going to start in with LitRPG news. And in LitRPG news, we're going to start with information from M.A. Carlson. He sent a note to the podcast that his next book, World Tree Online book, it's actually the 3rd book in the series, but it's called The Mountain Valley War Second Dive Concludes. He showed off the cover art for us, which I'm sharing with you, of course, but he also says that he expects to release the novel on May the 1st of this year. Pre-orders beginning on April the 24th. So he also says that there are going to be sales for book 1 and 2 leading up to the new release. Book 1 will be on sale starting on April the 24th, and it'll be available until March the 1st for $2.99, which is about $2 off in US dollars of the normal price. Book 2 will be on sale for the same period. It will, however, be $1.99, which is a much bigger price reduction. So definitely go check those out. I'll add this to next week's show when the sale actually starts, but I wanted to share it with you folks who are looking forward to the next book in that series, as I was. Speaking of some sales, we actually have quite a few sales this week that are actually starting now. After many months of toil, the 3rd book in the Arcane Online series, Kingdom Come, is now available for computer. This is James Baldwin's series. And to celebrate the pre-order release, the authors put the 1st book in the series, Dragon Seed, for free on Amazon until April the 20th. So you should have a couple more days for that sale. We have a link in the show notes, or you can just go to Amazon and look up Dragon Seed by James Baldwin and check it out. But in addition to organizing his own series as a free to promote his thing, James is actually at a con right now, and he is also organized several other LitRPG and GameLit authors into like organizing a discounted or free weekend basically for a lot of the first books in their series. And there's a whole thing here. You can actually go to James's website at jamesosiris.com and see the full list there, but these are the ones that are LitRPG or GameLit, including Void Legion, which is up for free. Now that one is actually through BookFunnel, so we have links on the show notes for all these free stuff and reduced prices stuff. But this one has a link to BookFunnel. Everything else is on Amazon, and it includes Dragon Seed, which you just mentioned, which is for free, and Patera Online. Books 1 through 3 as an omnibus is free, so that's a super good deal for those first 3 books, which are really good. Feedback Loop, again, another omnibus for the first 3 books, 99 cents. Everything else is 99 cents here. So free Feedback Loop, books 1 through 3. Borrow King, also 99 cents. Accidental Thief, Endless Online, book number 1, Fate Seal, Deck of Souls, Arcane Kingdom Online, Pangea Online, Death and Axes, Party Hard, which is the Pixel Dust, book number 1, then World Tree Online, book number 1 by E.A. Cooper, as is Initializing Somni Online, book number 1, and Ruins of Majesta. All those are 99 cents. They're all available right now with the exception of the last one, Ruins of Majesta Volume 1. There was a bit of a snag according to the author in setting up the sale. So it unfortunately won't start until the 20th, but then it'll go through till April the 25th. And it'll 99 cents for a very good book. So all those many books are available for 99 cents or free. So it's a great weekend to pick up some really enjoyable LitRPG GameLit novels if you haven't had a chance to read them yet. So there we go. Okay, moving on to our next story. Just a quick congratulations to Mountain Dew Press and Jay Boyce on how well their latest novel, Adapt, is doing. It hit the low 130s on Amazon sales ranking last week, and that's on all of Amazon, so it's really good. And we always like to congratulate people who do well in finding their audience and doing well in their sales. That means they can continue to make books and help entertain us. So it's always something to be celebrated when a book does well. So congratulations to both of you. And last bit of news, don't forget that we're actually trying to get the great bearded author Charles Dean, who's the author of the War Turner series, and a more recent release, which is the Heroic Villain. He has a fun fan group called Spoiled Rotten Readers, and we're just trying to get some more people to go there and to like it and to enjoy it. The goal currently is to get 300 people to like the page, and Charles Dean has offered some very interesting rewards, including like doing a live stream of him singing the ballads that the audience wants to hear, or doing possibly a live or a recorded cooking challenge where he's doing a cooking LitRPG episode or something. I'm sure we can get him to do all kinds of fun stuff, including dancing or just like author interviews or, something fun for the community of people. Me personally, I just want to make my friend do some really weird and funny stuff in front of everybody because it's fun. So I'm trying to help promote that particular group at the moment. And to help that particular cause, I'm actually going to donate 5 audiobook codes to the people in that group. I'm basically going to if we hit 300 people by the end of the month, end of April rather, then I will donate 5 audiobook codes. I'll give them out randomly to from the list of members in that particular group. So go join, go potentially get some audiobook codes. I know there's some other authors who have also offered to offer up some like prizes like ebooks and stuff. So hopefully we'll have a nice reach. There's not really that many people left. Like the book group is currently at 280 people. And so 300 people isn't really that big of a reach. The biggest issue is like, it's almost the end of the month. We're already past the middle of the month. So if you want to help encourage people, just go share the link or share the page and just go join it. You can potentially get an audiobook code donated from us. And we'll link in the show notes to go check out but it's called Spoiled Rotten Readers. So there you go. Okay, that's it for LitRPG news. On to books that are out now. This is oddly a much smaller list. Like I said, it wasn't a very busy release week. There are only 2 other stories that came out as new ones, including Perla Online, Sheila, which is the second book in that particular series, and Denshin Desire, a lewd saga adventure by Eden Reed, which is a adult novel. There are adult situations, sexual in that particular series, or most of the stuff that's written under that title on the lewd saga adventure. But there's also like GameLit LitRPG stuff there, so it's always usually an enjoyable combination if you're into that. But there are actually a lot more new LitRPG audiobooks that have come out in this past week, including the 3rd book in the game series called Sacrificial Pieces. The 4th book in the Dark Herbalist series is out, Finding a Body. The 2nd book, Dungeon Deposed book number 2 is out as an audiobook. 1,000 Drunken Monkeys book number 2 in the Hero of Thuris series is out. The 1st book in the Curse of Hurlick Ridge, First Dive, Rural Tree Online is out. That one was written by A.M.A. Carlson. It's out as an audiobook right now. The Hall, book 1 of the Morelligan saga, is out as an audiobook. The Idol System book number 2 is out. And Rural Tree Online, which is written by E.A. Cooper, different series, similar title, that is also out as an audiobook as of right now. So there are plenty of new audiobooks to listen to this week. So there we go. Now on to upcoming LitRPG, which is just where I read off a bunch of stuff that is coming out in the near future. There are a few new additions to the list, but you feel free to skip ahead to the actual reviews. On April 22nd, it'll be Class A Threat Discardium book number 1. On April 24th, this one's new to the list, War God's Mantle book number 3, Underworld, is going to be out. On April the 25th, it'll be In Search of the Uldens, Galacticon book number 2. April 26th, it'll be Into the Dragon's Den, Axe Druid book number 2. On April 30th, this one's new to the list, is Limitless Lands book number 3. That pre-order just went up. It'll be for April the 30th. We already added Mountain Valley War. Second Dive concludes from A.M.A. Carlson. There's not an official pre-order yet, but again, the author has already given a release date, so I feel comfortable dropping in and saying it'll be out on May the 1st. On May the 2nd, it'll be Starbreak, Rise to Omniscience, book number 2. May the 7th, it'll also be The Azure Dragon, a heroic fantasy saga. This is the third book in the Tar Chronicles. That's that Russian translation of the monk LitRPG story. On May the 14th, it'll be Monster, LitRPG series, The Beetle. May 18th, Guardians of the Roundtable, book number 5. May 20th, the fourth book in the Reality Bender series called Web of Worlds. May the 21st, the second book in the Al Forum series called Skirfear. On June the 1st, it'll be the second book in the Ramon Mejia series called The Life. On June the 1st, it'll also be James Baldwin's third book in his series called Kingdom Come, a Little Bit Dragon Rider Adventure, Alchemy Online Chronicles book number 3. That's the one he's kind of promoting with that free release of his first book in the series. The third book will be actually be available to purchase on June the 1st. June the 10th, it'll be Apostles of the Sleeping Gods, Desardigum, book number 2. On June the 13th, it'll be the sixth book in the Good Guys series called Home Sweet Home. June the 15th, it'll be Code Hero Champions is Playing book number 2. June 20th, it'll be City of Freedom, Adam Online, book number 2. On June the 20th, it'll be Djinn Tamer, Evolution, which is the third book in that series. We're actually reviewing, again, the second book in that series on the podcast today. On June 25th, it'll be Shift, book number 2. So there we go. All kinds of great new fun things, folks. But before we go on, we're going to go on to the LitRPG reviews. Okay, beginning this week with Djinn Tamer's Rivals, a monster battling GameLit adventure, Djinn Tamer's Bronze League, book number 2, written by Derek Allen Sidaway and AJ Cerna. There we go. It is 361 pages, $5.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. And here's the author's description. Let the rivalries begin. If Jackson Hunt ever wants to become a champion monster tamer, he's got a long road ahead of him, and he's not the only one with dreams of glory. As the new season of Djinn Battle League fast approaches, Jackson prepares to enter training camp, a grueling series of tests to discover talented new tamers. The rules are simple. If you're not the best, you go home. For a young man who lives to battle, going home isn't an option. There's only one problem. Jackson isn't so sure he deserves to be there in the first place. With the competition heating up, Jackson's bond with his Djinn will be tested to their limits. But no matter how much he trains, his new monsters won't work together. He won't stand a chance. The fighting will be intense, the rivalries fierce. At the end of the road, the chance of a lifetime awaits. Against friends and foes, both old and new, can Jackson prove he's worthy of a shot at the big leagues? So there we go. And that's actually a very accurate-ish description of what the entire novel is about. I enjoyed this book a lot more than book 1. Actually, I gave book 1 a score of a 6 out of 10. And that's just because it did end up working for me. It leaned a little more too much towards realism, and it felt a little more like animal fighting instead of like monster battles, which is a little more fantasy-esque. And this book basically solves that. This book gets right into the action. There's no setup necessary because, honestly, if you've ever seen Pokemon or Digimon, you're already kind of familiar with this kind of concept of battling monsters. And this one just jumps right into it, doesn't assume it needs to set anything up, basically. And it gets right to the good stuff in the first chapter, which was a much bigger improvement over the much slower beginning of book number 1 for me. The series as a whole takes the Pokemon-esque world. In book number 2 actually fleshes it out a little bit better than I think book 1 did necessarily in a larger sense, and like explaining how people capture monsters, how there's a whole economic system involved. It takes the main character to different locations outside of his little trailer park and his little island community potentially. And it kind of just leans really heavily into like the Pokemon-esque battle system where it's like, oh, the main character, he fights and he trains and he captures monsters and there's battles and there's rivalries. And that's all you kind of need for this kind of story. And in book 1, there's a lot of other added stuff that just kind of, I guess, just for me anyways, distracted from those core qualities that I think I was expecting. And in book 2, it doesn't. there aren't a lot of extra other things. Like, it really does lean into more heavily into like that core expectation of, oh, this is kind of like Pokemon or Digimon or something like that. And while the world is better fleshed out because it's novel, not just a television show or anime, it still kind of keeps those core competencies for this kind of subgenre, and it does it really well. Game mechanic wise, things are kind of filled out. Again, you basically get to see stats for monsters for the Djinn, and they evolve and they get stat points and all that good stuff. So there's RPG elements here, but again, it's not super heavy. Like, you have trainers calling out attacks and they do them, and there are no like damage notifications or anything. It's just like, oh, you can kind of estimate based on their current health. But overall, again, the novel won me over because, again, it kind of leaned more into what it was supposed to be, which is just kind of this battle monster story about capturing monsters and training them and fighting. And that's kind of all you need to do, because the genre has kind of already been established by like decades of stuff from Pokemon and Digimon and monster capture battle stuff. So there really wasn't a necessary, there really isn't a need to kind of explain what it is, and book 2 doesn't. It just kind of jumps into that and it codes the whole way through. So combining that with like this underdog story, that's all you really need from me. So for me, I had a nice time with it. Gets a score of 7.3 out of 10. That's Djinn Tamer's Rivals, the monster battling game, Little Adventure, Djinn Tamer's Bronze League, book number 2, long title, with the score of 7.3 out of 10. And next we have Towers of Heaven by Cameron Milan. It is 306 pages, $2.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. Here's the author's description. One day, 6 towers appear on Earth. Each one stands hundreds of stories tall and are invulnerable to all attacks. At the base of each tower is a portal welcoming in all who dare to enter. All sorts of magical monsters can be found inside the towers. Even treasure, magic, and superhuman strength can be acquired. The problem is that the towers aren't a friendly place. Even worse, the towers sometimes release waves of monsters to attack Earth. In the year 2083, there are only 100 survivors. In one last attempt, they challenged the final floor without regard for their lives, and by some miracle, they managed to beat the floor at the cost of their lives, leaving only one survivor. As a reward for clearing the tower, he is granted one wish. He decides to go back in time to before the towers arrived. His goal is simple: prevent humanity from being wiped out. Okay. And that's actually a really succinct description of essentially the first 10-15% of the story. I actually found that particular section of the story to be the most annoying, just because there's no RPG mechanics there, but it does a good job of like setting up the situation and the motivation. Even if like the actual description is throwing out a bunch of names that you're probably never going to hear again, and throwing a bunch of like descriptions and characters for like overpowered characters that are already at the end of like their story cycle. But again, it sets up the premise of the novel, and that the main character gets a chance to travel back in time to the beginning of when the towers appeared, or in this case, when he first entered, and it sets that up. So after that, though, the story actually gets entertaining and becomes more of an overpowered main character story, a little bitty story, where the main character clears increasingly challenging levels in a tower dungeon. If you don't know what that is, essentially a dungeon story is when like you go underground or you go into some maze or labyrinth, and you fight monsters and you collect experience points and treasure. In this case, it's in the form of a tower, just going up instead of like down. If you've ever read Speedrunner, should be a very familiar concept in that. Part of this is like, oh, these towers are bringing like this almost RPG-ish apocalypse set in, again, this core tower system, and the goal is for humanity to beat them. The main character in this story in particular is majorly overpowered in the entire story, with both a lifetime of battle experience and knowledge of future events. And as long as you're okay with that, and the slice of life nature of the story, I think you'll actually have a good time. I did. It's mostly just fighting, training, some build theorizing, and a little bit of team building as the main character seeks to get a group together to eventually try and beat the tower at its highest level, and thus mankind. However, that's more of a series plot. I did think there were some interesting things here, especially the use of the future knowledge aspect, which was kind of a nice twist or addition to the overpowered character story. The game mechanics are more reminiscent of an MMO than like a tabletop RPG, in that the levels don't really impact the story very much, but they're rather reflective of the relative powers between characters or between monsters and the players. They're really just a way to show that the main character is overpowered when he beats higher level monsters. Still, it is LitRPG. There's XP that's gained. Their levels are impact health and stats, and these centers grow in power by getting new skills and abilities and magic and equipment. There's a bit of class theorizing, I should say. And I thought that was kind of neat in that characters, the main character and other characters, are trying to figure out what powers they should get, what equipment they should buy to kind of fulfill the role that they say they should do, so I always enjoy that particular like thought process of seeing how the main characters and the characters are actually looking at the RPG mechanics that do exist in the story. That works for me. Overall, this isn't a complicated story. And not every level the tower the main character goes through is particularly interesting. Some are kind of boring. Other ones are just like, oh, that was a really good fight. Or that was a really good scene or whatever. And overall, though, I enjoyed the slice of life action adventure. But again, I like slice of life novels. I'm okay with an overpowered character as long as that's my understanding. I don't like it being surprised upon me later, like, oh, he's presented a certain way and then magically he wins. No, this character is very obviously from the very get-go, from the very first time he travels back in Temporal, he's totally overpowered, and that's just part of the story. So just be aware, overpowered main character story, slice of life adventuring, and if you're not cool with either one of those, you might not do that story. But if you like those kind of things, I had a good time with it. I think you will too if you like those. So for me, it gets a score of 7.5 out of 10. That's Towers of Heaven, book number 1, with a score of 7.5 out of 10. And next we have Attack Protocol, a LitRPG Space Marine Adventure Omicron Sector, book number 3, written by A.M. Reynolds. This is 88 pages. It's 99 cents. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. And here's the author's description. Captain Aaron Taylor and his crew have been stuck in Omicron Sector, the most popular sci-fi MMORPG available, for approaching 24 hours. If they are stuck too much longer, their bodies might start feeling the effects of dehydration or worse. Tempers flare and anxieties are building. To make matters worse, the mysterious Rand Akhtar is keeping Aaron's teammate Colin in medical quarantine. What other secrets is he keeping? In this rousing conclusion to the Omicron Sector trilogy, Aaron and his team have to figure out a way to free their friend, fight back the alien menace, and if they are lucky enough to log out of the game and go home. So there we go. The author says this book is a novella-length short story written for fans of Halo, Warhammer 40k, and Destiny, and is a Space Marine LitRPG story. So there we go. Okay, full disclosure, I got an advanced copy for review. I purchased the copy when it became available. Here's the review. It's honestly been a little bit of a time since the last story came out, since book 2 became, I think, like a year and a half. And to be honest, I had kind of a hard time getting back into the story. And this is kind of a negative for a short story because you don't have a lot of time with the story in the first place. But eventually everything clicked in place. I'm like, oh yeah, that's who that guy is. This is what it should look like. But I kind of had a hard time revisualizing what the people looked like, what their spaceship looked like, what the space station looked like. And it would have been nice to kind of have like a little bit of a more descriptive element in the beginning of the story, just to kind of reinvigorate my imagination of what everything's supposed to. And that's mostly because, again, it's been like a year and a half since I read book 2 in this series or so. But other than that, like I said, eventually kind of clicks back into place. The premise really isn't that complicated. Again, virtual reality game gone wrong, group trapped in a game, weird virus changing players into monsters, and maybe aliens trying to evade from another dimension. So some very interesting story concepts there. Overall, this is mostly just action adventure. The action stuff is good. Space battles, sci-fi weapons, RPG, MMO powers. The actual RPG stuff in book 3 is a little lighter than I probably would have liked. But I can get that the author's trying to tie things up, so he doesn't want to invest a ton of time in his short story, leveling people up necessarily. So, but the game mechanics are still there. Levels, health, that kind of stuff, armor, ability. It leans a little more towards sci-fi. However, the cyberpunk invading alien aspect is kind of my least favorite part of the story. And it's not that concept isn't cool. It's that those entities break the RPG rules that are established. And that always bugs me when you take the time to establish RPG rules and then you twist them or you break them because of some other influence. I'm like, oh, then what's the point of having them sometimes? It wasn't bad enough that it broke the story for me, but when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's annoying. Still, while this isn't my favorite entry in the series, that'll be book 1, it was entertaining and it was a nice cap to the short story series. So I had a good time with it. It gets a score of 7.1 out of 10. That's Attack Protocol, a lit RPG space marine adventure, Omicron, book sector book number 3 with a score of 7.1 out of 10. And next we have Respawn 18 and Up, Respawn Lit RPG series book number 3, written by Arthur Stone. And don't judge that by the title too much. It doesn't mean that there's sex or anything in here. It's just that's the life that he's on. Okay. This is 270 pages. It is $5.99. It is not available on Kindle Unlimited. This is a Russian translation. So there's always that time period where it's just not available on KU, and we hope eventually it will be. Here's the author's description. Targets come in all kinds. Some fall prey to those holding a gun for the first time. Others cannot be defeated even by the most experienced shooters in the world, unless their luck comes to save the day. Cheater's accuracy is unparalleled, and Lady Luck is on his side. He has all the marks of a champion, and champions never miss. The true aim of his heart, though, is not one that can be hit with a single fortunate shot. No, she is far to the west beyond the several of the continent's most dangerous locations, the bleak boundaries dividing regions from one another. Solo veteran immunes are little more than clumsy chunks of meat in such places. Never mind brash newcomers like Cheater. But Cheater's not going solo. He's an experienced friend, but loyalty is very hard to verify. And you never know when a friend might disown you simply for failing to complete his task by its deadline. Okay, so that's really super vague, and it doesn't describe the series as a whole at all. However, I like this series, and I think sometimes I feel like I'm in the minority here. Because there's a lot of reviews for this series, and that part of that is the fact that it's an Kindle Unlimited, that you have to purchase them, and the purchase price is a little bit, it's about twice, 2 cents per page, which is a little higher than I personally like to pay, but I never regret paying it for the series, just because it's an entertaining series. It's a slice of life RPG apocalypse story with the twist of adding a temporal reset upon death to the beginning of the apocalypse. So essentially, there are a bunch of players in this world, and it's kind of inferred that it might be this artificial system or an MMO system, but it's essentially an RPG apocalypse. And whenever a player dies, no matter where they are in the apocalypse, whether it's been a day or a month or a year from the start of it, they always get reset to the very beginning of the apocalypse. But they keep the knowledge that they've accrued of how to survive, what these different monsters are, where potential weapon caches are, how to defeat and survive. But because they get to restart, they get to make different choices. They can go off in different directions, interact with new people, and all the players have these particular options. There are a limited number of resets or respawns that they get, but everyone kind of has the same powers. And mixed in with the players, of course, like regular NPCs and monsters and people that change into creatures. And as the apocalypse continues on, things get worse and worse. Like the monsters start to evolve into worse monsters. So, and it's a whole system of thing. And I really genuinely enjoy the fact that they do get to reset and learn from their mistakes. It's a very interesting opportunity of some very potentially interesting storytelling, because every time a player dies and resets to begin apocalypse, that's a different opportunity for the author to tell a different story. And so I've always enjoyed that particular aspect, because essentially every single book in the series can kind of be an independent story. Like you can jump into book 3 here and still have a pretty decent time. You may be a little confused about specific people's names, but everything's pretty well spelled out in each particular, and that's a consequence of that particular premise setup, which I always thought was really kind of a nice way to tell a story. This the series is entertaining. There again is a kind of a series goal, which the novel description kind of touched upon, but it's really just kind of a thing for the main character to have a far off goal to. Each novel has lots of action, and it ramps up as the story goes on, always culminating in like this big, exciting ending. And book 3 is really no different. There's a bit more solo survival stuff in book number 3, but you're still going to get good fights with zombies, worse monsters, other players. The RPG stuff is it's in the medium. It's not super light, but it's not super heavy either. The RPG mechanics are essentially like, oh, the characters each have powers. They get rewarded with stats and abilities and levels as they beat monsters, and also like a minor morality system with humanity points. There's still RPG mechanic theorizing and planning as like the characters try to like get weapons that are going to enhance their particular build that they're going for, or get abilities and weapons that do particular damage sets and stuff. But that's kind of where the RPG mechanics are. Overall, I like this third book a little bit more than book 2 for me personally, just because it's a faster paced opening. Like in book 2, it was a very slow beginning. And that kind of, I think, turned off some readers. Book 3, bam, right into the action. And it's a really good, opening scene for the book 3. Overall, though, the book still has good action adventure, decent RPG stuff, but always an entertaining story. Be aware, though, that the story has more than a few typos and errors, and that's mostly I think just because it's a translation from Russian, and so you're going to get a little bit more than other novels potentially. But for me, I still had a good time with it. Get the score 7.4 out of 10. That's Respawn 18 and up, Respawn LitRPG series book number 3 with the score of 7.4 out of 10. So I had a good time with it. And that's it for us, ladies and gentlemen. That's the show. Thank you very much for hanging out with us this week, or for me. You can follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, on Patreon, on our website at litrpgpodcast.com. And of course, there are plenty of other great groups on Facebook and Twitter where you can go hang out with authors of LitRPG stories or other readers, and they all interact and have a really good time. A lot of great communities here. And of course, if you want to support the podcast in any way, shape, or form, you can find out all the ways you do so at litrpgpodcast.com/support. But if you want to support us this week, remember, go share this post. Go share it among your friends and followers and people that you know. If you enjoy the stuff and you want to share the good news of LitRPG, just share. There you go. Thanks for hanging out with me, ladies and gentlemen, today. And until we can hang out again, remember, folks, to go read some LitRPG. Goodbye, everybody.